Hello and welcome to our special series on defining 6G networks. I'm Guy Daniels and this is the launch programme for the third report in our series. What does the community want from 6G? We've received so many positive comments from the first two reports, so thank you so much for those. And if you have not yet seen these early reports, then you can still download them from the TelecomTV website. So what do we have in this third report? Well, like the first two, we have focused on the recent 6G workshop event that was held by the 3GPP in Korea. And just to remind you, there are well over 200 separate submissions, which we have divided amongst three reports, one for vendor submissions, one for network operator submissions, and this one focused on submissions from the wider stakeholder community. And within this community, we have segmented responses between enterprise users, non-terrestrial network providers, organisations and R&D facilities. And we have analysed a total of 78 documents for this report, summarised each one, and identified some of their major themes and issues. And you can read these summaries in the report, which includes a comprehensive directory section. We then created a far more detailed analysis of all these submissions, identifying common themes and areas where opinions differed. And we did that for each of these four groups of stakeholders. So let's start with enterprise users, and these covers shown here are just a sample of the submissions. In total, 10 enterprise users made written submissions to the workshop, and these covered three distinct areas as per the agenda: overall 6G vision, RAN technology, and the system architecture and core network. There were 13 papers submitted in total. Now, these submissions covered a lot of ground, as you would expect, and we have highlighted some of the more interesting takeaways here. Focus on industrial 6G. Don't make it an afterthought or optional extra. Remember that manufacturing industries have long product cycles, so they need backwards compatibility. And do everything possible to ensure a single global standard for enterprise verticals. Sensing requirements come up frequently in these submissions, alongside ISAC, the new Integrated Sensing and Communications use case. Now, this example you can see here comes from Philips, and it looks at service continuity for sensing applications. Well, moving on now to NTN providers, non-terrestrial networks, which predominantly feature satellite. 9 NTN providers made written submissions to the workshop, and again these covered the three distinct areas of overall 6G vision, views on the RAN and the system architecture and core. There were 12 papers submitted in total. And some highlights from these presentations: a lot of calls for a single and unified 6G radio access technology, along with a desire to create an alternative to the current global navigation satellite systems. So not just an integration with NTN, but a complete unification. And a reminder also of the benefit that such an approach could bring to terrestrial service providers. Now, this rather complex diagram comes from the European Space Agency, and it shows how the various elements of NTN, not just satellite, fit within an overall service provision environment. It's well worth getting the report and studying it in more detail. Moving on now to Telecom's organisation, and here's a sample of some of the document covers. 11 organisations made submissions to the workshop, and again these covered these three distinct areas as shown here. There were 16 documents submitted in total. And just as we saw with operators, there were many calls to keep things simple, to remove complexity and uncertainty. A seamless migration from 5G was called for by industry groups such as GSMA, And also the need for open interfaces and vendor diversity was brought up by some organisations with an eye on possible geopolitical uncertainties ahead. Now, organisations were not very prolific with their diagrams, but here's one from the Future Network Services Group. And this suggests an architectural modification to 6G to incorporate an AI native approach. And finally, research and development facilities, including universities, agencies and research spin-offs. 23 R&D facilities made submissions to the workshop, covering the 3 agenda areas shown here. In total, there were 37 documents submitted, which we have incorporated into our report. A common theme across all stakeholder groups is improved energy efficiency, and there were a lot of suggestions within the R&D submissions. The inclusion of AI in the 6G standards from the outset was also seen as very important. And a reminder to consider revenue generation, not just cost reductions, as a key driver for 6G. Now, this diagram here from FutureY ties together many of the research areas under consideration and how they could augment a 6G new radio design. Well, so many innovative ideas and concepts. So please go ahead and download this latest report and do let me know your thoughts. Please get in touch. Our next and final report will be published in May when we consolidate our findings and discuss the next steps for the industry as it continues to define 6G networks. And alongside that report, we will be hosting a panel discussion on TelecomTV to delve deeper into some of the key findings from this report series. For now though, do enjoy the report and goodbye for now.